Would you go on a podcast with your partner and have a couples therapy session? Well, essentially, that's what's about to happen. So, Caroline is my life partner. She also runs the podcast and the business, and she's never been on the podcast before. And we thought, you know what? It would be really interesting to sit down with Dr. Victoria and talk about communication. We run a business together, we run a house together, we've got a couple of fur babies, we've got a little boy. There's lots of things that go on in our life that require communication, and sometimes we nail it and other times we don't. So you're in for a treat, and we wanted to share this because we figure that most of you that listen are in a relationship with someone, whether it's an intimate partner, a friend, a family member. We've all got relationships and also professional ones, and at the end of the day, communication is the difference that makes the difference. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. The Lead on Purpose podcast is sponsored by NZ Mortgages. Learn more at nzmortgages.co.nz. Dr. Victoria, a huge welcome to the Lead on Purpose podcast.
Thank you.
Today's a very unique day because I've got two new people here in front of me, one being my partner, Caroline. Caroline, welcome to the Lead on Purpose podcast.
Thank you. So weird.
It feels weird, eh?
It does.
Usually you're on the other end, editing.
I will still be on the other end editing.
This is true. First time sitting in the seat, and we're really excited about this, Victoria. You're a clinical psychologist based here in Christchurch, and I look at leading on purpose as something that requires lots of different components. And often we think drive hard, be really committed, be obsessed with your thing. But I think off-field, healthy relationships and healthy well-being help us perform better on-field. And so I thought it would be amazing for us to sit down and chat together. And Caroline kindly agreed to come on the show for the first time. So first up, thank you. Second, do you mind sharing your expertise and what you love to help people with?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, guys. And Caroline, I know that this is your first time here, so we can do this together.
Yes.
I'm a clinical psychologist. I am based in Christchurch, and I also work remotely online, seeing individuals and couples. I've got a bit of an eclectic mix of things that I am interested in and work with. One of them being couples therapy, another being I work in eating disorders as well, with people who suffer with eating disorders. And I also do just sort of general individual therapy for things like anxiety and depression, and also forensic psychology, and that is working with people who have offended. So I do reports and things like that, yeah. In my past, I used to work at the prison, but now I don't work there, but I still work in that area. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And I guess for me, I want to think about one of the key components, and I look at this because I've done this really badly, and Caroline can probably agree with this, communication. I think it's literally the starting point of success or failure. And often we can bring everything back to how was that communicated, or was it communicated? And, for me, I always thought communication was verbal. But often, as I'm learning, it's more, there's intonations, there's body language, there's the things that are unsaid. And when I work with high performers, often I see their biggest problems coming from communication. And when I look at my own relationship, I would say my biggest challenges come from communication. How do you feel about that?
I think it's both of our biggest challenges. Different ways of communicating. Very different ways of communicating.
Totally. You grew up in South Africa.
Yeah.
I grew up in Northern Ireland. Two whole different views of the world.
Yeah.
And our dynamic's quite interesting.
Yeah.
We've got Finn, who's our son, and he calls Caroline bonus mum. We run a business together.
Cute.
We literally spend all the time together. It's full noise.
Yeah, it is. And I guess my communication is over communication, and then yours is a little bit like, oh, we're done.
Let's move forward.
Yeah, we're done. We're moving forward. Yeah. That's it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no. We have 5 more hours. I've got to debrief. So yeah, I guess that's where we've done a lot of work on it though, but there's probably still more work to be done.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And I think that is the most common thing that couples struggle with is communication. And like you said, it's the cornerstone of your relationship, as well as your interpersonal relationships outside of your intimate one in your workplace. You know, we're always trying to strive and learn to communicate better. And I think there's a few things that you touched on, Jason, I think would be really good for us to kind of circle back to if you want to use your business talk. But one of them is about, that usually you kind of focus on high performance and that sort side of things. And what you said was, it's also really important that we look at the other parts of us, our relationships. And that's so useful to talk about, because how hard is it when you've had an argument with your partner and you go off to work for the day?
Yeah.
It's so, in most cases, it is so front of mind.
Yeah, it takes over.
It does. And your usual way of connecting with your partner throughout the day, as we do now that we have phones and email, etc., those things can be thrown off as well. So the usual pattern in which you maintain connection with your partner after an argument is thrown off. So it has such an impact, not only at home, but also at work. The other thing that you talked about, and I have now forgotten.
Yeah, that's okay, because I talk a lot. That's my problem, being Irish.
So do I.
Yeah, so I do.
Oh, I got it. Caroline, you talked about the dynamic of you talk a lot and he doesn't talk much. And that is...
In an argument.
Yeah. And that is something that is super common. So there's a couple of things that maybe we could explore a bit more.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So in terms of your experience of communication at home, does that feel for you guys like that the style in which you communicate with each other is different to the style that you might communicate with at the office if you're having conflict, for example?
100%.
Oh, mine is the same.
Is that?
Yeah, and definitely the same for me. For you, different, yeah.
Yeah. To me, I guess I probably have a disease to please sometimes, where it's like always seeking harmony. And so I've the Clifton strengths, did an assessment around like different strengths, and harmony came out as number one. And I thought, oh, that's so good. Like, that's such an amazing thing. I actually, when I dig into it, it causes me so much conflict, because I'm always looking to just, no, that's fine. Just move on, don't worry about it. And I would probably do that a lot professionally and struggle to draw boundaries. Yeah. And then personally, I probably just go, let's just move on. Yeah. That's fine. Let's go. I'm done. It's all good. Like, I don't want to sit and explore it in detail. So there probably is a wee bit of a nuance for me.
That harmony looks a bit different at home versus where it does at work. At work, you find a sense of harmony from pleasing others. Yeah. At home, the harmony is found in perhaps the same thing in a strange way, where you don't want to rock the boat.
He doesn't want to rock
or upset you.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as just playing out differently.
Yeah. So instead of saying something, he'll just be like, no, it's all fine, let's just move on. And then it could be weeks later, and then it comes up. It will like subtly come up in conversation. I'm like, we didn't move on then. It's still there. We should have dug and we should have got to the bottom of it. But I think that's uncomfortable for you to.
It's like confrontational almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas for me, it's like, let's just overshare and over communicate until there's no more to come out, and then we can put it together again.
So you're fearful about saying something at the time. You're fearful about it coming up and rearing its head another time.
I struggle in conflict. I struggle to let go.
Yeah.
So if it's not like fully resolved, so like we could have an argument and maybe chat about it for 5-10 minutes, and then James is like, cool, we're done. And then I'll just sit there and think about it and be like, no, but we're not done.
And then I get frustrated at that, going, I thought, well, we're done. Like, we're good.
Like, no, it's still there. Until like it's almost like I've got to peel back layers of an argument till I'm at the bottom of it.
What would happen if you didn't?
I sit in it and then I ice him out. Yeah. So my natural, and I've done this in work, I've done it with friendships, previous relationships. I just completely ice people out, and I'll just be like, no, I'm done. And I think I've ignored you for like a day before. In previous relationships, it's been like sometimes a week. Not ignoring, but just really cold shouldering, which I know is very unkind. And while I'm doing it, I'm hating doing it, but I just had no other way of figuring out how to communicate. Like I didn't have the skill set, and then, learned, read, went for therapy. And now it's almost like for me not to do that, we have to completely over communicate.
Yeah. So you over adjusted.
Yes.
Perhaps you feel like you over adjusted.
Yeah. And then you.
But I think I much prefer
it's better.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's better than
because what would have happened before you did that work? I mean,
I'm stubborn.
You're stubborn.
I'm stubborn too.
You're both stubborn.
Sorry.
Both tendency to withdraw. It shows up in different ways.
Yeah.
But back before you did the work, what happened? Was there when you guys...
Separation, like physically, geographically, like, okay, I'll head out, see you later, have a great day.
Yeah.
And I would just go and get on with things as if like I just got to go and give Caroline space to be, and then when I come back, I'm sure it'll be fine. And
it was worse.
But interesting though, Caroline did try to repair, so I would get a text from Caroline within an hour saying, hey, I'm really sorry about that, or hey, can we chat about that later? And then I would get annoyed. I'm like, that's not a text. That's a in person. We should be talking, not texting. So like, she was trying to repair,
but not the way you thought
not
was
the way
right.
you
not on my
wanted.
terms or whatever. So I got my back up about that. And I was like, please don't text.
What
me
did
that
it
stuff.
mean to you when she texted instead of said it to you in person?
I like the fact that she was acknowledging, hey, there's something not right here that we need to talk about. But then I felt like, that's not a text. So I felt like it's almost like not an easy option out, but it's like it's not sitting here and doing this.
Yeah.
It's just like, let's move on, and by tonight it'll be fine. So part of me liked it.
Yeah.
A part of me was like, oh God, I don't know if that's the way we should do
Easy
it.
road.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is often something that can crop up for us when we have arguments with our partner. Even if they do the behaviour that we want or that we like, sometimes it still doesn't feel like it's good enough or satisfying enough, because often it represents there's something else underneath that. Because what you're saying is, I liked that she reconnected with me and repaired. I don't like the way she did it, because to me that meant something else. So it wasn't what it was on the surface, which was this was a bid for reconnection, and for you it was like, well, no, because it's not quite. It's not in the way that I want it. So therefore, I interpret it as meaning you're avoiding, or clearly, this isn't as important to you as it is to me, and it doesn't deserve a face-to-face conversation. So it's the meaning making, even though what you actually want
happened.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And that's probably something recently we've chatted about, where I've said, actually, if you want to text, I think that's cool. I think I've started to come around the fact that if that's your way of like, because I'm not actually that great at repairing, in terms of like, I can see there's a disconnect, we've had a disagreement, and it's never it's never aggressive, it's never screaming.
Never explosive or anything. Quite level-headed when we're arguing too. And like, it's like a debate.
It is.
Like a presidential debate for our point of view.
Which one are you then?
I'm Kamala.
You call me Trump? I love that.
This is going to turn into an argument.
Not at all, that's hilarious.
I hope it does. We can play it out in
I
real
should have put
time.
more makeup on. That's what I should have done today. But what I struggle to do then is go, okay, we're butting heads. Let's just like have some space. We'll come back. And then I struggle to like have the initiation of that. Like Caroline is often the one who goes, hey, should we chat? Like, should we sit down? And like, I'm like, yeah, we should do that.
Never used to be that way though. I used to just be like, nope, you can come to me. And now I'm just like, actually, no. I think as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I really want you close, and I don't want to push people away, because I've done that. It's not worked to this point. And I want to break that. So for me to get over it, and no one likes feeling like you feel in an argument.
No.
So
well, some people do.
some people do. I have up to this point, I think, being comfortable in it.
Comfortable, perhaps, rather than enjoy. Yeah. And so much of that is dependent on our context as well. The environments or families that we grew up in, whether, some families are really, conflict forward and it's normalcy. Some families are really conflict avoidant. And so that stuff plays right into the way that we communicate even as grown adults with our own children and relationships.
Yeah.
And I think what you were talking about is something you used to do, which we'd probably call something called withdrawing warmth.
Yeah, taking
Where
love away.
yeah.
Not kind.
Well, it's not that it's unkind, because it's protective. It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
The purpose of it sometimes is to cause harm.
Yeah.
And that's because you hurt me, I hurt you.
Yeah.
But it's not unkind. That's a judgment.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm
And
judging
because
Yeah.
it's just a survival
Yeah.
thing. Ultimately, we want to protect our well-being and our hearts. And if you feel rejected or abandoned or criticized by someone else, then that can be a really common reaction as we become cold or withdrawn.
Yeah.
Another reason for that also can be to try and ineffectively bring people toward.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
come
what's
back to
going
me.
on in my mind, is if I withdraw, you'll be like, no, come back. But really, who wants to come back to someone who's just like, don't come near me?
And often when we're trying to repair, I'll say, would you like a hug? And you're like, no. I say, you sure? Because you've told me in the past, like when we were trying to repair, you'd like me to be close and just hold you. Nope. And then I go away, and then I'm like, and then later you'll say, well,
You should have just hugged me.
yeah, you should just tell me. I don't know that. I hear that you don't want it, and you do want it.
I know, I'm lying to you with my words. It's not, it's very misleading.
But you're not trying to do that. I can
I'm
see
not
that.
trying to do it. I just don't know how to.
You're too activated, perhaps, for
Way
that,
too
that moment of
activated.
closeness. And I think that that's okay, because maybe you might say, like, not right now. I'm just really a little bit activated. Let me calm down, and then later, can we please resume, or can I come back for that hug when I feel ready?
Yeah.
Because that's not about. She wants it,
Of course.
but it's perhaps the physical response, the nervous system is, if your defense mechanism has always been stay
push
away, to have, when you're activated, to come straight in.
Yeah.
Sometimes that might be
terrifying.
too terrifying, too overwhelming.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
The dynamic that you talked about, we call the pursuer-withdraw dynamic. It's, I would say, 90% of couples that I work with have that exact dynamic.
Wow.
If
So
that
I
makes
pursue.
you feel any better.
Yeah.
No, you withdraw.
Okay. Interesting.
Maybe you both used to withdraw,
Yeah.
but
Now
now
I
you pursue.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're getting better.
Yeah.
When he withdraws, what happens for you?
I feel myself now wanting to withdraw and then being like, no, don't do that. That never works. And then I feel like I nag you, maybe, and that makes it worse. And then he can sort of get a little like snappy. And I'm like, oh, and the minute you're snappy, I'm like, nothing can happen now. I'm going to leave the room. I'll go do something else. And then you're pretty good now. Like within 5 minutes, you come find me and you go, I'm so sorry that I snapped. And then we can talk about it. But yeah, when he withdraws, I definitely start spiraling a little. Like, oh my God, he's withdrawing. How long will this last? I've got to run after him and fix it. And
I can literally feel it in my body, like that snappiness. That's like a short responses, like, nope, yep, cool, yep, fine. Or I'll go into these big words, and I'm like, what am I doing?
this is a thing. His vocabulary, I can always tell if we're in an argument or if I've triggered him, because all of a sudden the thesaurus is out and he is throwing words. And I'm like, you've gotten really clever all of a sudden.
Yeah,
You're
what am
trying
I
to win
doing?
a fight. I'm not going to come back with anything clever.
What is that? Is there something about that?
It's, again,
Big words.
not uncommon.
Oh.
I think that, in my experience of it, it's about defense again.
Yeah.
Men are socialized to be, logical and not be emotive. And so therefore, when you're triggered, which is what's happening because you're probably noticing in your body tension, you are only able to give brief responses because you're probably worried that if I say any more than that, I might lose my shit. Or,
Emotionally, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, lose my
so
cool.
you're shutting it down, or so you're going that way.
Yeah.
The other way you're going is, let me think about this logically and let me problem solve this, because your goal, from what I'm hearing, is don't escalate. I don't want conflict.
100%.
He doesn't want conflict.
So you withdraw. And so you then start talking to her like it's a business meeting.
Yes.
Because that's not where emotion, we don't get it. It's just business, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah, and I see
how
what
do
I'm
you
doing it.
feel?
Yeah, and you're like, what's beneath that, right?
Yeah.
So you can't hug. He can't get emotive right then when
Yeah.
he's too activated.
Yeah.
But you both can do it when? 5 minutes later?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it depends.
It used to be a lot longer.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It used to be quite a lot longer.
But like a year, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, you started reading a lot. And as you were reading every morning, you'd be sharing what you're reading about. And a lot of
Yeah.
it was psychology and vagus nerve and like
All of that
understanding
sort
all
of
that.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
helped.
therapy and stuff has helped a lot too.
Yeah.
To try and break that cycle of icing out. And then also learning when I don't feel the fight is done. I struggled a lot because I thought that I was holding on to it just for the sake of having something to hold on to and to fight about. And then learning in therapy that I was holding on because I actually didn't feel it was resolved. And that's okay. Like I'm allowed to keep it and be like, no, look, we haven't fully figured that out. And that was okay.
Deeply uncomfortable, I must admit, but it's very okay.
But then we did, like, it took a while for you to accept that that was okay. Not that you told me it wasn't, but like for you to actually like go into it with me. And now you are pretty good at diving into the conflict a little bit with me.
Well, even emotions, like I didn't realize how numb I was. And it was actually through Finn, our son, who we'd talking about emotions with him, because I realized when I look at depression, mental health statistics in New Zealand, it's pretty terrible. And when our kids get to teenage stage, it's like horrifically bad, our stats. So I want to get to the bottom of what can help him. And I started to understand, like actually males struggle to connect with emotion, label emotion, make room for emotion. And so we got this pack, and it was just a simple kids emotion card pack. And it was phenomenal. And I started
It was
going,
really good.
I couldn't describe it. So on the front, it tells you the emotion. And then the back, it describes the emotion.
Yeah.
I couldn't describe the emotion. Like I knew what the emotion was. Like, oh yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah.
But I had no words
Like,
for
how
it.
does it feel in your body? Yeah.
It's so it's really an interesting point, because when I work with men on their own, that is a common experience. If I ask them to say, when you're angry, what does it feel like? Or when you experience anxiety or stress, what does it feel like? And it's almost, I understand logically what the word means. I'm really finding it hard to tap into my experience of it. Whereas in general, women are much more able to tell me an example of when they felt like this, or tell me exactly, that the sadness felt like a weight in my chest, or that this kind of sinking feeling in my stomach. So there definitely is, from my experience at least, and I know that the research supports that men have less of a vocabulary for emotions. Hopefully we're on some pathway to change with that.
Hope so.
Even experiencing your own benefits of doing that through Finn.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's already like miles ahead.
Of me? He is actually. No, he
but
really is.
like at 8, I did not understand emotions the way he does. And like he will come home, like be lying in bed, and we put him to bed, and then he'll come out and say, I'm really anxious. And he'll explain what it feels like, say where he feels it, and then we'll all just like come up with, I don't know, not a solution, but it's okay to feel that way, and then lie with him and do some breath work, and
Wow.
then he moves through it. And it's like, he is one lucky kid. It's really cool to see. So hopefully more boys
Yeah,
have access to that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's it like for you to make space for Finn's anxiety?
I find it really worrying.
Yeah.
I get really attached to his emotions.
Yeah.
That'd be fair to say.
Yeah.
I get like if there's something wrong in his world, or he's sick, or like yesterday he fractured his foot, and I feel it for him and I worry. And I know that I can only control the controllables, but there's something like, as a dad, I don't know. Yeah, I struggle actually to not just be in his emotion with him, and so I think Caroline helps to actually create a space where we can actually just look at it together
Yeah.
and observe his emotions.
Because I think we're also conditioned to view those times as threatening, difficult times. But what we know is that that's just the reality of life, that we have times where things are harder for us, or we're a bit sadder or more anxious, and that so often we view that as this terrible thing and threatening and we must make it go away. But we can't, of course. It's just part of life. And I think what sounds like what you guys are doing is beautiful. It's about, sometimes we do feel anxious, and here's some things that you can do. I can't make it go away for you, but I can sit with you and be there, and here's some skills that might help.
Yeah, we definitely want to teach him not to try and get rid of the emotion. And we've been telling him all of that pack has so many different cards, and saying all of those, it's our job and our experience as humans to feel all of those. And if you're feeling them, I feel like if you're feeling the negative, not negative, but labeled as negative emotions, anxiety, anger, fear, if you're feeling all of that, that's quite healthy, because then it might mean that when you feel the joy, it's going to be all the more beautiful. Yeah. And that's sort of how I'm trying to look at it, because I've definitely been inclined to be not pessimistic, but more so than you.
Yeah, I'm very positive psychology. What's possible? What's positive? Let's move towards it. I want to avoid all that stuff. Get away from that stuff. Let's just go there.
Yeah, so now we're trying to teach Finn that you should have it all.
Yeah.
And if you are having it all, great. You're human. Well done. Welcome. It's going to be tough, but
All the best.
Good luck with that one, buddy.
Here's a pack. Off you go. We're good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is that idea of toxic positivity, and
100%.
that we don't set people up for what people expect, that we should be happy all the time, and that's what we strive for. But true happiness, I don't believe actually really exists. I think we have moments of happiness, but there's no end. Yeah. There's no end point. And I wonder, just thinking about that idea of end point, when you talk about it's not resolved for me, how do you know when something is truly resolved?
I just feel like I can be me again.
Right.
If that makes sense. So when we're in an argument, there's less of me that's allowed to be there. But when it's fully resolved, I'm naturally quite playful and really silly. And I'm not like that if it's not resolved. And I can't be like that. I can't make room for play. So when it is resolved, I know it's resolved because play comes back in.
Instantly.
Do you think that in both of your experiences, when you say it's resolved, you believe that at that time that the issue is solved and that's it? Or is it that you have somehow found room for acceptance of it where it is?
I think, I don't think it's ever done and resolved, but he's acknowledged my side and validated that what I'm feeling is okay and allowed. And same for you, I think. But for me, I think that's more important, that you're that's okay to feel that way.
Right, so you feel safe again.
Yeah.
And then you could be playful.
I can be playful.
You don't have to shut him out anymore.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can be playful with everyone.
Yeah. So I can come back out now?
Yes. I definitely hide away. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And then, once it's resolved, I can come back out and play.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
The playfulness, how do you guys use that in arguments? Both of you, from my conversations with you thus far, you're both quite playful, good sense of humour.
Thank you.
I can see it between the two of you.
Arguments. I often laugh at him when the vocabulary comes out, like you're doing it.
And then I'm like, oh God.
Right.
Oh, I'm doing
The
it.
big words are coming out at me. But
And what happens? When she does that?
Often I will actually withdraw more.
he denies
that she's highlighting it. I'm like, what? That's a normal word. I'm like, then afterwards I'm like, you're an idiot, James. Why did you use that big ridiculous word? Yes, I definitely withdraw more. I would say on average. Sometimes I might be like, oh, you're right, but I would say 95% of the time, go, that's a word. I can use the word, and then I wind myself up more about it to the point where it's like, hey, we just need space.
Yeah, and I don't ever the playfulness comes out, and I can't seem to catch myself because I know it might trigger him, but then I'm just like, I'll do it anyway because it's fun. And then, then it triggers.
Yeah. Okay.
You need to catch it.
Also, I could catch it, you know what I mean? Rather than like trying to push it away and run, I could probably learn to like, oh, you're right. Like that could be a trigger for me to change course.
I think it might come across as like maybe teasing, you know, because I'm just trying to make light of a situation.
Yeah.
But maybe it comes across as like, this isn't serious.
I think it's a tough one because playfulness can be so helpful as well in arguments. When, you know, those moments where it has changed your trajectory. How do you make room for playfulness that it doesn't feel like she's making fun of you or criticism? And so there is a slight, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, a slight need to push at that moment.
Yeah.
So then it's not true playfulness.
No,
right? It's more about mocking, perhaps, or maybe it doesn't consciously feel like that.
Yeah, and it does come across as teasing then. And mocking. Yeah.
Yeah. But there are times where if you set it up right, it can be really helpful. But that's helpful when it's when we remember, which is the most critical thing. If you take anything from today, it is me and you, not me versus you.
Yes.
And often when we are arguing, I'll be like, I'm on your team.
Yes, and you say that?
I often will come in.
Yeah.
Because I think, like before you've said, you've come in and you've attacked me. And I'm like, no, I don't mean to attack you. And I am sorry if it's coming across that way, but I'm on your team.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to fix it. Well, not fix it, but resolve it and talk about it. And when you have that, like you're attacking, that's when I know you're not ready. And I'll just come back another time. But yeah, definitely always saying we're on the same team.
Yeah, you're very good at that. And there's probably something along the lines of when Caroline is trying to resolve it, I think there's a part of me where I'm like, I want to be the leader. And, you know, like in a lot of my roles, it's like I'm the leader or whatever. And it's like, it is an ego thing. I'm about to say I don't think it's an ego thing, but it's an ego thing, right? And it's like no, I should be resolving this. Like, it should be my thing to resolve. And like, I got to be the one that leads it. And so there's probably a little bit when Caroline is going, hey, come on, like, let's sit down and chat it through. I feel like, why could I not have done that?
It's a power struggle.
Right? And so it's...
That is arguing in relationships.
Yeah, power dynamics, man.
There's a few common factors that like underlie arguments. It's about who's in control. Do you care about me? Do you respect me? Or are you leaving?
That's
Can I trust you? Safe.
The leaving thing is often a thing for me. If we're
Abandonment.
if we're in an argument and it's gone, like it's nighttime. Nighttime is just like not a great time for me, just before bed. And if we're still in a weird space, I will always be like, okay, so are you going to leave?
You've asked me a number of times, are you going to leave?
Are you going to leave now? And he's like, no, I'm here. I'm like, okay, I'll go to bed then and we can chat tomorrow. I just need to make sure you're staying. And he's like, I'm staying.
And have I ever left?
No, not yet.
Never. All right. It's like, yeah. It's interesting though.
Yeah.
And that comes from, I guess, past experiences. And, you know, the nighttime thing is challenging.
Yeah, nighttimes are tricky. I think for a lot of people they are though.
Right.
That like anxiety that creeps at night. You know, especially if you, like the person you're safe with, if you're uneasy with them, then all of that is just way worse.
And you don't probably need to go into detail if you don't want to, but growing up in South Africa, personal safety wise.
Yeah, I mean, most South Africans know it's not the safest place in the world.
Especially at nighttime.
Especially at nighttime. Yeah, so we're definitely, instances with not violence, not for me, but break-ins and robberies. Nothing ever happened to me, but I was there when those things happen, and they've been at nighttime. So nighttimes are always tricky for me. And I know I'm safe, but...
Does your body?
Yeah, it took a while. When I first moved from SA, it took a while, like even, bars on the windows here, and I was like, this isn't safe. We should not be sleeping. Windows are open. Why are the windows open? But yeah, so I think I'm still in that nighttime as a dangerous time. It's
an interesting thing when the body is still responding in that conditioned way. even though logically you're like,
Yeah.
I'm fine, it's safe. And I have a lot of South African clients who have shared similar sentiment, that actually moving here to New Zealand has been amazing, but also incredibly challenging, because how do you go from what feels like one extreme to the other, and how do you relinquish some sense of the control that you had?
It's that control over safety, isn't it? Like
Even stopping at lights, people, that takes people a long time. Or I know that some of my clients have struggled when people are coming up to, they can come up and wash your windows when you're waiting at the light.
I'm still triggered by that.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah, even though logically.
Yeah, even like Finn has picked up on it. Like he'll get in the car, the minute we're all in the car, doors are locked. And he's like, whoa, South African in the car. Like he actually calls me out. I'm like, oh,
Yes, he does. He's a character.
Yeah, your body, holds on to all of that, I think. And then it is really confusing being here, because logically you're safe, but your body's like, no, but what if? And you're like, oh.
And isn't it the same pattern that we're talking about? Yeah, logically I know I'm safe with you.
Yeah.
But I don't feel safe. And logically I want you to hug me. I know that we should hug, but I can't.
There's that conflict between mind and body.
Yeah. I mean, our bodies hold so much, and they've had over, to keep us alive this long, to keep humans going, that we have these automatic bodily responses that we store, and even ways of viewing the world that we store, because the brain likes to make patterns. And we do make up patterns, and that's why, even stuff that you learned about conflict growing up, those are we call them schemas, your patterns or lenses of viewing the world. Your schema is different to your schema. Your schema is different to my schema. We all know that if we walk up to a door, we turn the handle, push the handle down. That's a schema. I know how to do that. And it's the same thing. Same thing for arguing, same thing. Yeah. Yours is, you've got one there about safety, and that's your lens.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah, and likewise for me, when I think about my schema.
Northern Ireland also not great.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And so you two have that in common.
Yeah, conflict zones.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, going back there, it's a beautiful place, Northern Ireland. I've got a beautiful family there, but still there's that, I think, my child view of what it was like, because I knew maybe the same in South Africa. I had this perception as a child what Northern Ireland was like, and I think possibly I made it even more dangerous and scary in my own mind there.
Yeah.
But then probably the most interesting thing for me was mum and dad separating, and I can't remember exactly what age I was, maybe around 11-ish, 12, I don't know. And just watching them separate and divorce, and their styles, very different styles. So sometimes I see a bit of my dad come out at me.
Yeah.
And other times, you're laughing, you're smiling. And other times I see my mum come out at me.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I love them both. But sometimes oh God, I remember that. That's like a memory from when it was quite turbulent. And probably that impacts how I engage and communicate. Is there a possibility for us to rewire or improve these things that are essentially schemas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have those learned behaviours. I think most people, even people listening, will have all turned into their father or their mother at some point. And it can be horrifying, because you're like, oh my God, that wasn't even me. It was like they just took over me. And sometimes you think, God, that's the thing I really didn't want to do. Yeah. And now I'm doing it. And then we get all of this horrendous internal, I'm just like them, or, I'm going to turn into them. And what you have is the beauty of being able to look down at that and go, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And you do things differently. I think you talk about, can we change things? Well, I think both of you have had your own lived experience of that we can change and progress over time. Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the most helpful things that we can do in that is with our schemas. If you walk to the door, to use a door analogy again, you're not going to go, okay, now I need to push my hand down. You just do it. Yeah. It's the same thing when we're arguing, is that we just do it or we just say it. And so sometimes what we need to think is, how do I make a pause between action, like my, the action and the reaction, right? Reaction and the action, whatever. But how do I pause here? Because I'm going to say something I don't mean, or I'm going to not say anything. How do I find that space? And in that space, it's often beautiful to be able to bring in a bit of playfulness and humour if it's coming with the right intention. But that pause is probably the most powerful thing that you can do in communication, because what you've both talked about is, oh, well, then he'll come back to me and he'll say, I'm sorry I snapped at you. Or then she'll come back to me and she'll give me a hug. Because what's happened? You've had pause. What's happened to your nervous system?
Just,
So write down, right?
Yeah.
We're not in defense mode anymore. We're not in fight or flight.
Yeah.
We're here and I'm open. I'm when we go into fight or flight, the front part of our brain, she shuts down. And so we've got these old parts of our brain, and those are the things that we rely on for our fight or flight. They're the oldest parts of our brain. So that's like the stuff that kept us alive back in the day. Like, there's a threat coming towards me, the lion coming towards me. Okay, my body knows I got to pump blood, so I got to run. So over time, of course, our brain has evolved, and we've developed the newest part of our brain, which is the top part. And that is all of our sort of like more developed logical thought, ability to forward plan, executive function, all of that stuff. When we're in fight or flight, that part of our brain switches off and we go right back to the oldest parts of our brain, which are survive. Animal brains, yeah. And so when we're out of fight or flight, what happens is that part of our brain comes back online, and then we're able to go, fuck, I sounded just like my dad. Or, oh my God, why did I say that? Like, that's such a cruel thing to say.
Yeah.
Or, I've really hated that part of me, but in that moment, it's so primitive.
Yeah.
And that's why fighting can feel really, sometimes really, you're in the lowest depths.
Ugly.
Wow, the primitive you's really smart with that vocab.
Yeah, totally.
Primitive me is not very smart.
It's interesting you say this, because like it takes me back. So I think of my late teens, early 20s, and I was competing as a drummer and came to New Zealand to try and help a New Zealand group win the World Championships. And I was pretty young, very young to be leading a group. And a lot of the people in the group, similar age, but also right up into my parents' age. And when they couldn't perform, or when the pressure went on and they didn't perform well, I bubbled up into like anger and said things like, and swore and at these people, these amazing humans. And literally I'd go home after that rehearsal or something and feel so down and be like, I would beat myself up. I was like, that's ugly, that's horrible. And I felt like the worst I'd ever felt. For years though, I did this on repeat.
Yeah.
And then I started to like understand the brain a bit more. And I always say the power is in the pause. And so when you're talking about the pause, I'm like, I now sit, I want to respond, the animal brain, but I breathe, and I might just not say anything. And I'll retreat, and I'll sit in the pause, but instead of for like 30 seconds, it might be 30 minutes or 5 hours. And it's almost like I've went too far.
Well, it's a good learning opportunity then, because then you say to your partner, this isn't going anywhere. I'm two. You take responsibility. If you're the one who's calling time, I'm getting too activated and I'm saying things I don't mean. Can we please come back to this conversation? And you always give a time.
Yeah.
Because if you don't say, in 10 minutes, or I'm going to come and get you in 15 minutes, someone might feel abandoned.
Yeah.
Or they're going to keep going. Right? Someone. But you have to make a time because you're committing. But you're going to come back with a clearer mind. Yeah. So you can take longer than 5 seconds, because some of us can't regulate that quickly. Some people can, but I certainly can't. No. You can say 15, 20 minutes. 4:30, I'll come back in, say that you're in another room. I'll come back in here and we'll talk it through. Let's both just take a minute. And that doesn't mean that the other person might not still be activated, because they might think that you're giving up or walking away. But if you can start to initiate pause and arguments, you give yourselves both the best
give it a
opportunity.
shot.
Yeah.
And you said bringing play into the pause. How can you do that?
Well, I think it can be quite tough because when you're calling pause on something, if you're in that pursue-withdraw dynamic, if you're the withdrawer and you call pause, what the tendency is that the person's going to go, no, we need to keep going. Yeah. So sometimes it's just about acknowledging probably what might be happening for that person. Like, I know that you really want to talk about this and I really want to hear it. You could, if it felt right, even name what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think we have to use playfulness carefully. We can definitely do it with arguments that are less gritty.
Yeah.
Bickering, for example, or why didn't you put your bowl in the dishwasher? There's room for playfulness there because we can't take everything in.
You're good at that stuff.
Which stuff?
With like the small stuff, the house stuff. Like you're playful with that,
Yeah.
and it gets me to go. Oh, yep. No, you're right. Let's go. Hoover out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be. I mean,
So play can come in there.
play can come. I mean, that's that dynamic around mental load and household responsibilities is.
There's been some big progress there, actually. Yeah, there's a bit
It has been.
Yeah.
I'm going to call pause because I want to hold that. But I also want to touch on something that you were talking about, James, which is around when you were working and you were helping this band.
Yes.
There is something there maybe about what happened when it didn't go well and what did that do for you? Well, it activated something in you, your deep-rooted beliefs about yourself, right? It wasn't actually about them.
Yeah.
It was about you and this isn't good enough or I'm a failure. Probably, we won't go too far into your core beliefs, but most of us have I'm not a very good blah or I'm not a good enough person or I'm a failure or I'm worthless. We all have these deep-rooted, we call them core beliefs.
Yeah.
And they form so much of the way that we engage with people and the world. And so what happened was that their failure, you internalized as your failure. And that probably you've resolved that core belief or you defend that core belief through perfectionism,
Yes.
high achievement.
100%.
And so what happens in relationships where you've got high achievers or a high achiever, well, what tends to happen is that the same standards that one expects of self, they then place onto the other person.
Yeah.
What they also tend to do is bring the other person in. Let's do a business together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Let's do this together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that can make things, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not a judgment, but it's just a tendency because the relationship becomes part of the business, the achievement. Come on in, let's do this together.
Yeah.
And
That's
That's
fascinating.
interesting.
I'm not conscious of that. That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And going back to like the 20-ish age, I came away from a group in Canada and we'd just won the World Championships 2 years in a row. And I had then stepped down from that. I was 21 or 22, I don't know, that young age. Came to New Zealand to do it on my own and almost felt like I had to prove to my leader in Canada, like, I'm good enough. And I felt like I was never good enough. And, 80 to 90 hour weeks, no problem, let's go. And up at 5 a.m. and going to bed at midnight. And, the poor people that committed to being in that band, what I put them through in terms of like, we're going to stay here for 6 hours until this one little phrase of music is perfect. Like it was so fanatical. And I got like angry. And it was more like, I think frustration, like I'm an imposter. Like I shouldn't be leading this team. My mentor is going to see me or the leader is going to see me in a year at the World Championships and point and laugh or be ashamed of who I am. There were so many
the
complex
scariest
things.
thing, someone will witness my failure and that will show them that I am what I fear. Yeah. And then the soothing is, 80, 90 hour weeks.
Yeah.
That soothes my core belief. But over time, what happens becomes the norm. Boundaries between work and home get blurred.
Yeah.
And, at the end of it all, it's never good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just going to keep striving.
I burnt out. I mean, the thing that was my passion and my joy, which was drumming as a kid, like I started drumming as a kid and it was just joy. I retired from it, from competing. I resigned from my job. I actually ended up hating it.
Yeah.
I burnt out.
You don't play anymore.
I don't ever lift the sticks. No.
Yeah.
It's like gone. And I guess looking at that, I feel like now there's not that anger. I don't express that.
No, you're never angry.
No.
Or like, he never comes across as angry. I'm sure there is anger in you though.
Yeah, probably. I think I'd struggle probably to connect with even the word anger, probably because I want to push so far away from what I was as a young man. And it's interesting, I went back and talked to some of the people that were in the group. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like,
Wow.
And they're like, James, you were great. Like, you see what we did together? Like, what we were able to achieve? Like, we did X, Y, and Z. And yeah, sometimes you got a bit intense, but I think most of them were able to say, actually, it was fine. It was what happened and we can deal with it. I would say there would still be some of them that would be like, God, that was traumatizing.
Right.
They weren't living on the inside of you. Like they weren't experiencing all of that anger because you were feeling it too. So they don't know how intense it actually was.
Yeah, I think it's like looking at a coach of a team, like a rugby team or whatever it might be. You can sometimes see them boil over and bubble up, and I think they feel it all. And I guess what I want to do is bringing it back into this and our relationship. And I guess for the listeners that are listening, like they're thinking about their relationships or their jobs, their people. I don't want to get to the point again where something that brings me so much joy and connection, which is our relationship, I don't want to get to the point where I'm like fanatical and it's like, you know, we've got to be perfect and we've got to win at all costs. Like, I don't ever want to get there again.
Yeah.
It's the things that I can be aware of.
That you can't win.
There you go.
Yeah.
If someone wins, no one's won. That's
like
what we
that.
say.
Yeah, it's tricky when it's business and like a romantic relationship in one.
How do you manage that? What are your boundaries like?
We work more than we should.
Yes.
That's for sure.
100%.
When we don't have fun over the weekends, there's always work.
Yeah.
And that probably needs to change.
I probably am going a little bit on the other end of the spectrum now where I'm like, Caroline, I think you shouldn't work. I think you should relax. I think don't check your email. Like, how about we switch off? I'm probably going the other end now. And when we're on holiday, I'm like, no working. Like, I'm not going to check my email all week. And you're like, oh, no, I'll keep
One of us has to be on, though. Like, it's a business that has to run. So someone's got to be on. But not over the weekends. That's where we can have better boundaries.
Is there a sense of you having responsibility
Over the business?
to James?
Oh,
Yeah,
do you mean...
he brought you into the fold and now do you feel you have to prove?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't feel that way. I think initially I probably did. But now we're just so different in terms of how we work that I just think I don't need to prove anything to you.
You're quite autonomous in your role.
Yeah, I like working alone and just holding myself accountable. That's not really a problem for me. If anything, I have to be told to stop, which I need to get better at. But no, I don't feel like I need to prove anything.
So outside of working together, how do you have quality time? Because then you've got Finn.
Yes.
Then when we have Finn, we don't work, and it's just
What about the two of you?
when it's just us.
Yeah, like how you and I probably both would have answered that the same way and just avoided the
When
dog
it's
walking.
just us, we walk the dogs. When the dogs aren't there, though, what do? We
Exercise together, run together.
very, very rarely, though.
Walking's a big thing. Coffee. We're always,
Coffee. We go on dates, like dinner dates sometimes. But work does tend to creep in, doesn't it?
it comes up a lot.
I don't know how to not have it be there, though.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't work with my partner, and when we go to dinner, I might talk about work or he might talk about work. But it's more about, there's a difference, isn't there? Because one of them is about hearing. My partner works in finance. Like, do I really? I don't understand. Is it the most thrilling thing to me? No.
Yeah.
But I hear and I listen because, everyone, all we want, whether we're just talking normally or we're having an argument, is we just want to feel heard. And so hearing someone, even when you're talking about an Excel spreadsheet, I'm hearing you, I'm listening, right? Do I care? No.
Yeah.
But does he care about half the stuff I talk about? Probably not.
Yeah.
But there's a difference because there's nothing, we don't have maybe a common goal shared there.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not a business meeting. It's you talking about your day and me talking about my day. How do you separate business meeting?
We don't really know how.
So interesting, because recently I was like, hey, we don't have any, because it's just pretty much Caroline and I, and then we've got a small team overseas that do editing and so forth. And I brought up, like, we should have a weekly business meeting, like official, like we sit down for an hour and we do it. And then for whatever reason there's resistance and we just be like, oh, but we talk about it kind of ongoing all the time.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe there should be a weekly business meeting.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And then we'll figure out what to talk about. Not talking
Well,
about
let's be honest, like the one thing we're kind of geeky on is like we are passionate readers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we read
love
quite different
bookshops.
things. We do.
Yeah. So that is something we do like to do together.
We have to carve out our own boundaries. You know, now that we're all working from home a lot more, we have to be intentional about carving out boundaries. And it's not unusual for couples to work together. My parents worked together their whole lives.
Yeah.
But they certainly talked about work a lot.
Yeah.
Growing up. And look, I don't have the answer, but I think that carving out space where you both make an agreement that it's not about that. And also, sometimes it's really normal to go to dinner with your partner who you spend all your time with and not have much to say.
Yeah. Don't feel bad if nothing.
That's also okay.
Yeah.
Because you don't.
We like to play card games.
We play card
when
games
we
a
go
lot.
out for dinner.
Or even for a coffee, we'll bring
Or
cards with
coffee. And then
Can't put them down.
us. Yeah.
yeah.
We're quite competitive.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. And then work can't really come up if you're playing cards.
It's true.
But you could also both have a conversation about it before you even get there, right?
Yeah.
What do we want tonight to be about? And of course, it might segue, but you can both catch it. That's mindfulness,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just might sway that way, and then we can bring it back.
That's brilliant. I like the idea of a theme. Like, hey, tonight let's focus in on a theme. Is that we, at the start of our, way too early actually, we started
Way too early in our
a
relationship.
book called 8 Dates
All right.
by the Gottmans.
James is quite an extreme person. So you were like, we're dating 8 dates.
So essentially the Gottmans like are passionate about relationships and they can predict like whether people stay together or get divorced.
Yeah.
Coming out of a divorce, I was like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
I failed. I don't want to fail again like that. That was hurtful for me and others. So like the Gottmans, what can
We're
I
going
learn?
to do this really well.
Yeah.
So that we succeed.
Yeah. And I'm going to use these people because I know.
Quite masculine, right? Quite like.
Yeah.
I think it's a failure. You know, I'm so fearful that will happen again. That if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right, and I'm going to know all about those 4 horsemen, and we're going to talk about them in depth, and I'm going to feel out whether you might, you know. How do you manage that? Is there a tendency for you? Can I ask? Were you with someone? Were you divorced?
No, I did have a long relationship,
Okay.
about 7 years,
Okay.
but no marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So both coming from a context of long relationships breaking down, yours culminating in divorce.
Yeah.
How do you tolerate if there is this kind of? It sounds like, I feel like I failed. I failed in my marriage. Therefore, we're going to learn all about the Gottmans, and we're going to, that's how I'm going to soothe that.
Course
and,
correct.
I'm going to control it because I'm going to know everything. How do you then tolerate when there is discontent in the relationship do you ever find yourself catastrophizing? Or is that perhaps part of the reason why you withdraw? I don't want to argue because if we argue, that might mean that we're headed for failure.
Honestly, consciously, I don't think I've ever thought that. But now that you bring it up, I'm like, that could be a real thing that's happening subconsciously.
That's definitely my thing, the catastrophizing.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful you haven't got there yet because imagine both of us.
It's not room for
catastrophizing.
2.
Yeah, I'm taking that one.
You win.
I do enough of it for 2.
I journal a hell of a lot, like
He does.
often
yeah.
twice a day. And it's like, to me, I think that's allowed me to get out of my head a lot and just doesn't make it perfect and it doesn't make it easy at times, but just getting it out.
Do you do everything to that kind of like you're like, oh, journaling's good. I will now journal twice a day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, a little bit. Like, it's interesting. I have this thing I ask my clients to do around building self-belief, and it's like, go out and text 8 people you love and trust, and ask them what the one thing they really admire about you and they would like to have more of in their life, a trait. And the first text I got back out when I sent this to one of my trusted friends, he said, James, your radical obsession. I looked at this and I was like, oh my God, that's awful. Like, obsession and radical. And then I called him, I was like, thank you so much for that. Can you tell me a bit more about what you mean by that? And he says, look, when you want something, like, you just go all in and you get after it and you stay focused on it. And so I see that as a strength, but I also see that as a really big weakness of mine. And like, if I had to go somewhere and my journal got lost, or like I've got on the front, if you find this journal, this is my number, there's a reward for this, bring it back. And it's like my thoughts, and there's nothing like special in it. But I'm quite fixated on like rituals, and I love routine, and it almost keeps me straight and narrow, soothing almost, I don't know, it's weird.
It's not weird.
Feels weird, though.
I don't think it's weird. It's just part of what makes you feel in control. I guess I'm just curious about doing something like that twice a day. And I wonder about how that links to your maybe more perfectionistic traits, and then what that's like when there is things that seemingly aren't going right, so then we're not going to argue, we're not talking about this anymore, it's fine, like, let's move on.
Yeah, he does. Now that you say that, like, you haven't done it in a while, but when we argue, or not even when we argue with work, for instance, if I forgot to do one thing on the lead up to a podcast episode going out, and then it goes out and that thing's not there that should have been there, whatever it was, James's response is always, okay, so how can we put a whole system in place so this never happens again, and then we can never do it this way because look, and I'm like, it was human error. Like, it's happened once.
I'm like, no, operating procedures, we can get something.
There must be things in place so that never happens again. And I'm like, something else will happen next time, and then we have a whole system. We can't. This is human error, and it happens. Yeah. And we need to let it go.
There is, it kind of, what you're talking about also brings up something else that's quite common in couples, is like this sort of attribution error. And it's the idea that, like, if you're late, it's because you're disorganized, you don't care about me, you don't see this as important. If I'm late, well, the traffic was bad, or my meeting ran over. So we have this tendency to say that our stuff is circumstantial, but your stuff is because of your character. And it's this, that's just a trap that we can fall into, and maybe, I don't know if that's exactly how it plays out for you, but if I forget to do something for the podcast, it's because I had too many things to do. If you forget, we've got to put a whole thing in place.
I probably beat myself up if I forget something. Like, oh God, I totally, like, I would go into a little bit of self.
I'm like, he's really hard on himself if he does something wrong. Yeah,
definitely.
Or not even wrong, just like,
that could have been better.
Just human error, like. Yeah. Just, it's fine. It is fine.
Yeah, I struggle with that. I'm just like, no, James, you could have done better than that. Like, come on. Like, I do a lot of self-talk probably around that.
It's just not self-talk. It's like self-loathing.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah. And I've called you out for it too, and been like, be kind, practice self-compassion. This is natural. And I'll say to him, if this was one of your clients, what would you do? And then he's like, oh, don't beat yourself up. And I'm like, and if it was me, the same thing, don't beat. And I'm like, so then why can't you have that?
You've been a great, like, not just a partner, but a coach at times in my life, where you have helped me to see it from a different perspective when I've been nervous or I've had doubts. Or it's interesting. I was called out recently. We had Daniel Pink on the show, who wrote Drive, and like, he's all around self-motivation. And I was saying, like, I struggle sometimes to go to a gym and like push myself to exhaustion. I don't like that. And he says, tell me how you feel about yourself when you think about that. I was like, pretty weak. Sometimes a bit pathetic, actually. And he went, okay, stop right there. He's like, that's exactly the problem. He's like, you have this negative self-talk. My God, I didn't even know it was there until he had asked me. But maybe at a subconscious level, that there is a little bit of that happening. Yeah.
And I think that the mistake that we make is thinking that drives us. If I'm hard on myself, I'll be more successful. But all of the research shows if we're self-compassionate, people who are self-compassionate end up being more successful in the long run because we allow for mistakes and we learn from them. We grow from them. Oh, gosh, interesting. What happened there? And we're not scared to make mistakes. You know, if you think about a punitive parent, if you make a mistake at school, you're so terrified and you're so scared of doing anything wrong. Again, you might not take risks. You might just toe the line. But if you have a parent who's like, oh gosh, that sucks, how can I help you? There's so much more room for growth there. So yeah, all of the research is saying if we're hard on ourselves, it is not helpful for us in the long run. So
it's interesting because you're like that with Finn, not hard on him. You are the parent who's like, oh, that sucks, buddy. What do we do next time?
What do we learn? How do we move? Like, it's right. I'm not the hard parent on him at all.
And he's like, there's been stuff come up at school and you've gone in for a meeting and stuff. And James he laughs it off.
Yeah.
He cuddles Finn, gives him all the kisses in the world. And it's like, cool, how can we course correct?
Is it because you know it's not helpful to be in the course?
100%.
Yeah, it's crazy idea.
Do it to myself.
Well, I mean, and that's what Caroline's saying. I mean, there's a beautiful exercise of self-compassion is how would you respond to a friend, to Finn, to me in that same circumstance?
It's a big work on for me. And it's actually quite an exciting work on. Like, it seems fun that I could do that and it doesn't seem like a chore.
Make your brain a nicer place to exist in sometimes.
Yeah, easier.
I'm keen on that.
Yeah.
I love it. Look, I want to be 100% mindful of your time and your time. But I've loved today.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. I'm sure the listener that are listening now will agree that it's been fascinating for all of us. I've learned like so much about me.
I've learned a lot about you. Yeah.
It's been brilliant. So, Victoria, thank you for creating a space for us where we feel really comfortable.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you guys for being so vulnerable and honest. I know that it's not easy to sit in that chair and behind closed doors, let alone on a podcast. So I think what you're doing is opening a conversation that other people can start to explore for themselves at home as well. And that's pretty awesome.
Thank you for making it easy.
Yeah.
And I would love to extend the invite in the future if we want to pick another topic or if the audience has some suggestions around topics. It'd be great to have you on again. For anyone that wants to connect with you, Dr. Victoria Thompson, I'm going to put all of your socials in the show notes so they can go and follow you, connect with you, learn more about your amazing work.
Come on over.
I love it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sweet, yeah.
That was awesome.
The Lead on Purpose podcast is sponsored by NZ Mortgages. Learn more at nzmortgages.co.nz.